in the Carl Kappa Theatre, Robert Jackson Center, formerly known as the Scottish Rite Consistory, which housed a variety of events, of which was part of your life.
Absolutely. And not to correct you, but this is the Richard Corbin Theater.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. In my world, this is the Richard Corbin Theater. Carl Kappa can have it now, but I grew up, this was where Richard Corbin was.
So give me a little bit of quick autobiography of John Fuchs.
Okay. Well, I was born in 1945, okay, in Flint, Michigan, where you could still drink the water at that point. And grew up in a little town called Holly, which is just about 20 miles south of Flint. And went to high school there, went to the University of Michigan, graduated from the University of Michigan as an industrial engineer, and started looking for a place to land. And I really didn't want to stay right in the local area of Michigan for some personal reasons. And I said, I want to be this far away. All right? I said, I want to be 8-hour drive away. And Jamestown, New York fell very nicely in that circle. And it so happened that Blackstone Corporation was interviewing for engineers. And I was subsequently hired and came to Jamestown in 1968. Okay? And worked primarily with the ultrasonics portion of Blackstone Corporation. As a matter of fact, I still do consult with them today, which is now 72 years later, I guess. So, do you want me to embellish how the theater got in there? Okay, well, I can do that.
Well, give me the quick autobiography, work-wise. Blackstone, and you worked at Blackstone Ultrasonics
till I retired. And then I stayed retired for about 2 years, and that didn't work very well. So actually they asked me if I would come back because I had a lot of tribal knowledge, if you will, technology that no one else had. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple of us that were in that position that we had been there so long and knew so much that when we left, the company did miss the technology that we had and had us come back. So, you know, my whole world has been ultrasonic cleaning. And my wife won't let me do the dishes. So it's, you know, it's been interesting. And of course we went through different ownerships, and under Reg Lene, of course, it was one thing. And then as another owner came in, as Reg got older and decided to pull out of that, and other ownerships came in, things kept changing and shifting, and the focus of interest kept changing. And finally, Blackstone Ultrasonics became an independent corporation under Jeff Bond at that point. And since then has also been through a couple of ownerships, but he's the one that saved it. If it weren't for Jeff Bond, Blackstone Ultrasonics, or Blackstone Nay Ultrasonics as it's known today, would not be here, simply because it wasn't making money. Reg Lene saw it as a very interesting technology. He was a very technology focused man. He knew technology. I don't think he was an engineer. I think he was primarily an accountant or whatever, but he did care about technology. And I really think that knowing what I know about how little money we were making in the ultrasonics division, that we were just a little indulgence of his over the years, because he used to talk fondly about the ultrasonics division and all of the things that it could do, and wash surgeons' hands and so on and so forth, which was not really true, but that's okay. He was having fun. And so I don't really remember when I retired. It was probably 10 years ago. And I had a bunch of honeydew jobs to do, paint the house and, you know, do some other things that needed to be done. But that did that did peter out after a while, and I went back and did the consulting, and it's been good. Well, when I hit town in 1968.
By the way, did you have a theatrical bent when you were in Michigan?
Yes, yeah. I did the high school stuff, and I did a lot of college stuff. When I hit town in 1968, I was single. I did not have much social life in town. And I met the person who lived across the street from me up on Benson Street. Her name was Sue Jordan at that point. And Sue introduced me, well, Sue and I talked about theater because she was involved with Dick Corbin in the theater. And you're gonna have to excuse me if I call him Dick, because although I know in later years he would only be known as Richard, he was always Dick to me, okay? So anyway, Sue Jordan introduced me to Dick, and I came into this building for the first time. And I had probably not been here more than 6 or 8 months in town. And I believe the first show we did was Mame. First, he grabbed onto me immediately because he knew that he needed technical help. And I think the first show we did was Mame in this venue here. He had done some other ones. But in those days, this theater was, as it was probably in the 1920s. You probably know what the date was when the theater was actually constructed. But the light dimming system consisted of about 20 old resistance type dimmers, big old handles on them and switches, and every single one of those dimmers was hardwired to a light somewhere in the auditorium. So we were limited to just use the lights where they were. They couldn't be moved. And it was quite a challenge, actually. I mean, we did a good show. We always did a good show. But I began to let it be known that this could be a much nicer place. Mm-hmm. All right. And so, and I really don't know these dates, but subsequently, within a year or two, I suggested that we make a plug board on the lighting system, which was backstage here on stage right, so that we could plug things in and out and change lights around and move this light to go on this dimmer and this light to go on that dimmer and so on and so forth, so we could have a little bit more flexibility, and also that gave us the capability, of course, to run extension cords from where we were to where we wanted things. And so that was the first step, really, was the patch panel. And what I basically did was I took all of the dimmers and brought them down to motor-based sockets on the board, and made patch cords that we could run between the light circuits and the dimmers, okay? But still, that was backstage, which means that all the lighting was done by feel, because I didn't know what it really looked like out here. I had to go just by feel back there and do lights on and off and things. So the second really transformation, and this was a major one, is that we basically stripped this auditorium of every piece of wire that was here. Some of that wire, when I moved it, the insulation fell off. It was that bad. And there was a group of people involved with Scottish Rite, and if I start mentioning names, I'm probably going to miss one, but ones that come to mind: Charlie Dorman was secretary, Wally Larson was involved here, Dudley Waters, Carlton Winchester, did I say Wally Larson, of course? And this was sort of, I would have to, Harold White is another one I forgot, and he was a major one. These seemed to be the movers and shakers group of the Scottish Rite. They could just about steer anything where they wanted it to go. And the decision was made that they would spend the money to upgrade the dimming system. Well, once we figured out how much that was, they said, wow, that's a lot of money. I said, I know, but we really can't do anything less than that, or we're taking a step backwards. So through a series of events, they said, okay, we have the money to pay for the equipment, the wire and the sockets and all of this, the dimmers and so on and so forth, but we don't have anybody to put it in. So, of course, the volunteer hand went up and I said, I'll do it. And I did it in exchange for living in the apartment upstairs in the other part of the building, rent-free, for several years. I don't remember exactly how long that period was. But anyway, the first step was to strip basically every piece of wire out of the building, which we did. And replace that with the plug panel wires, which basically are what's there now, which run from the plug panels up to the sockets, which you can plug plugs in and so on and so forth. There was an interim step in there where we built a small booth up at the top. The organ used to be located up there too, but anyway, small booth up at the top, and we put some lights.
Just as an organ? No kidding. So we had an organ up there?
It was a Hammond organ.
Hammond organ?
Yeah, there were 2 speakers down here. And we did build a little booth up there, which I had sort of omitted from the first description that I did when we did the plug board. That also came at that time. But anyway, we started putting in wire, and I don't really remember how long it took. It was probably several months. It was in the summer. I know we had the doors open, the bats were coming in. But when I could get help from people that were in the theater group, I would get it. You know, there's some stuff that you just have to do yourself, but other stuff that I needed help with, and I get people to come in and help, and they come in for, you know, a day or two or whatever. And during that transformation, we also built the big booth in the back, which had the 2 spotlights and the control board for the lights and the sound and all of that up there. So for the first time, starting then, I could actually see what the lights looked like on the floor, which was very, very interesting. And this is a different space to work with, too, because
What's the
although
time
there
period
is
before I forget that? We're talking mid-70s, something?
You know, I would say that. I think so. Let's see. I got married in '74, and I think that we had just finished this process before I got married. I think my wife helped me, my wife to be at that point helped me through a lot of this. She soldered a lot of the wires up on that board. So anyway, this is a special space because not only do we have a stage, which at that point was a full working stage with drops and everything, but you have the space out here, which is quite a large space, which means that you have to light both of those. Mm-hmm. We basically would work behind the curtain and in front of the curtain, and it would be a matter of getting lights where they needed to be. The lights in the ports up in the ceiling, for example, that was a challenge because I needed port lights. I needed lights up there to cover this area, and yet we didn't really want to ruin the ceiling and the aesthetics of the room to do it. And the other thing was that it wasn't really convenient to climb up there to do it. So that whole lighting system, or those ports up there, were all put in from the top. We actually pulled them up and seated them into the holes, cut in the ceiling. Jamestown Blower made those frames up there that they're in. So that pretty much brought the theater to the point that it is now. And then during this entire process, of course, theater kept happening, and shoestring players came to be, and I really can't tell you what date that was, because prior to that, Dick Corbin had worked with Little Theater, and he had done productions here. But shoestring was actually an incorporated group. We actually did have a not-for-profit going. So that sort of led to some interesting, it was a very, very social organization. The people that worked on the plays were friends. We all knew each other. Dick would find the right people to bring into the group to cast a certain show, and they would become a part of the group, or they might not become a part of the group. It depended, what they did. We had parties up at Dan Adelsman's club for every cast party was up there. So the social aspect of shoestring, I think, was, we're not really changing from the theater to shoestring. The social aspect was phenomenal at that point. And it was a great outlet for theater in Jamestown too, because tens, if not hundreds, of people that got their first acting experience here in this theater went on to do bigger things in theater in other places, Chicago, New York City, California, some movies, the whole thing. So this was a great opportunity for people to learn. There weren't many then. Things like Infinity didn't exist at that point. So people had to come in. The one story that I can remember is Tom Andalora, who now is in New York City. He saw his first live show ever in this theater, and it was You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And I don't remember exactly, he's told me, but I don't remember exactly how he came to have a ticket and come. But he sat in the audience, he said, I couldn't believe that there were live people doing this in front of me, and that was the thing that clicked him on theater, and he's been in theater for the rest of his life.
Sure.
So it's been a great thing. We as shoestring players did a lot because we were not for profit and because we really did not pay rent here. A lot of things were contributed or done for the rest of the building, for the Scottish Rite. Rooms were redecorated, furniture was purchased. A lot of things happened in there. And it was a good working relationship between the Scottish Rite and shoestring players. It was a very, very good thing for, I think, both of them at that point.
Was Dick a member of the Scottish Rite?
Yes. Yeah.
So there was that connector already.
There was that connector already, right?
In this theater has been here since probably 1925. We know at least that because Lucille Ball practiced here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a playbill that we found in the attic here in 2001. Randy Sweeney and I went up, and the attic was loaded with a lot of birds.
This attic here or the other one?
Over there.
Okay.
Over the mansion.
There's one over the house.
Yeah, and so we went up there, and it's a whole story. But strewn with stuff. I mean, just mess.
I remember.
Yeah. And we looked and looked, we were looking for the needle in the haystack, something which would be a file that would have Jackson. We wanted to find the Jackson Connect here, some papers, something, and we did. It was a long, dusty, but we found a box.
Well, he was a Scottish Rite member.
Yeah, right, 33rd degree, and so, yeah. So once we got into the story, he's all over this place. But what we found was a box, just a box, wooden box, just said Scottish Rite Review. Scottish Rite Review. And so, dust off open up the wooden box, and inside were two playbills. And the playbill said Scottish Rite Review, and it may have been 1927. And I opened it up, and sure enough, one of the actresses of the Scottish Rite Review was one Lucille Ball.
Is that right?
Now, the actual play was performed not here. I'd like to say that, but it was played elsewhere. But inevitably, the practices were here. It was a Scottish Rite Review, sponsored by the Scottish Rite Consistory, and the theater was here.
Right.
So anyways, that's always a fun little story to say. As part of your consideration for all the good work you did here, they did let you stay in the apartment.
Yeah.
Could you describe the apartment? I mean, I know what it looks like now.
Before or after?
Well, when you walked in, Dave, were there tenants beforehand? I mean,
Yes, there were tenants beforehand, and I do not remember exactly who they were. But they basically stayed there with the agreement that they would clean and do stuff like that.
They took care of the place.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, the apartment really at that point consisted of an entryway with a closet and bathroom off to the right-hand side, a bedroom sort of like off at 2 o'clock on this side, a living room, and a kitchen. And that was it. It was a bedroom, living room, kitchen, bathroom, and a big closet. And I sort of...
Do you have to step down like you did now?
Oh, yeah.
And so it's
yeah.
kind of the way it is. I mean,
it is.
The layout.
Yeah. Well, I did some things to change it slightly, but there was a room outside. All right. I don't know whether that wall is still there or not. I think it might be. And I sort of took over that room, so the apartment kind of moved out a little bit. And then I expanded a little bit more to the upstairs where the ballroom was, and now is the library. And I built well, it was a playroom, okay?
The original man cave.
Yeah, it was the original man cave. I made a stairway from the living room up the side wall. I don't know whether I think that's gone.
No, the stairways, we don't use it, we kind of cut it off, but yeah, it's there.
Okay. So I built a stairway up to the second floor. And then I built the walls of the second floor, which is quite a large space, in about 6 or 8 feet, I forget what it was, all the way around to isolate that space. And then I insulated it so that there was no sound up there. A fire truck could go by and you wouldn't hear it. And there was 4-inch thick padding underneath the carpeting, and I had a fish tank and some plants and some lights and a little light show on my own. So that added to the apartment.
Sure.
I know you guys had to tear all that out, but still, and then I also had built a dark room up there because I was doing photography at the time quite a bit. And the dark room was sort of like on this end as you walk in, off to the right-hand side. So, you know, it was a very functional space for me. But then after getting married, we decided that this wasn't really appropriate anymore, and my wife and I bought a house and put a darkroom there and all kinds of other things too. But no, that apartment, I think, must have been servants' quarters at one time, because I know the kitchen for the mansion was under where that apartment is. Okay, where the box office used to be.
Right.
All right, the area off to the south of that would have been the kitchen space, which was right, of course, next to the dining room.
Right.
So they would just go right straight through there and bring the food from.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I don't know when the connector was built. Of course, these were two separate buildings at one point, the mansion, and this was the horse barn or whatever. And I don't know when the connector was built. I assume when the Scottish Rite came in.
That's the story we have, is that 1920, when the Scottish Rite bought it, they started building these connectors. They turned the livery stable here into the theater, raised the roof,
Right.
Finished the basement to sort of their pool hall. And then this...
We called it the Rathskeller.
Did they ever use that bar downstairs?
I don't think so. You know, they built an entryway in from the back, and it was supposed to be a bar, right? And a bar was built.
It's there, yeah.
The bar, but I don't think it was ever used. I don't remember. There was a gap in my history with this building for 3 or 4 years when the kids were little and I was really, really too busy to do some of the other things that I would have liked to. And I think it happened during that period of time. But, you know, talking about downstairs, we also had shoestring parties downstairs, and that large kitchen downstairs was very convenient for making mass pizzas, and I think we had lobster down there once, and somebody forgot to empty the garbage out of the garbage room back there, and it got pretty smelly. But I remember we used to scare people because, as you know, there's a pathway down through the basement, which goes from back here under the auditorium and all the way through, and you can come back up in the front part of the building. Well, back in those days, Crescent Tool had a huge forge going 24/7, as you probably know.
I remember.
And we would take newcomers down in the basement and tell them to be quiet, and you could hear this thump, thump, thumping. And we told them the building was alive. And in actuality, of course, it was just the forge down at Crescent Tool, banging out wrenches.
Ed and I remember that very distinctly. We grew up on the south side of town, and that was just part of the.
Went to sleep listening to that.
Yeah.
Well, we all did.
Yeah.
I mean, even up on Windsor Street, where I live now and then, you could hear it. But getting back to the apartment, another thing that happened was when I built the walls in on the top. Dick Corbin was a collector of, he called them costumes. I call them old clothes. All right, but once we built the walls built the inner wall up there, I put a bar up all the way around, and he filled that. Of course, he had already filled the space behind the seats here, totally, to the point that there was no more room. And we probably had the biggest wardrobe collection in the city of Jamestown, maybe in the state of New York, I don't know, for a long time. I mean, when we cast a show, people would go into the wardrobe room and paw through clothes until they found the clothes they wanted to wear and things like that. We had the stuff, you know. The funny thing was, we never used scenery. Very, very, very seldom would you find scenery in one of the shows that we produce here with Shoestring. Everything was done with curtains. Everything was done with curtains, which did fancy tricks. We had one curtain at one point, I don't think it's here anymore, I'm pretty sure it's not, it was a contour curtain that we could shape into whatever shape we wanted to. If you needed two doorways, you pulled up certain parts of the curtain and they became two doorways. If you needed some grand ballroom or something like that, you'd pull it up into a V so that it would look like that. But basically everything was done with a few props and curtains. We never really did, I don't think we ever built a set that I remember on this stage for Shoestring.
So talk to me about
the Scottish Rite stuff, which is also theater, used backdrops, which were back there, of course. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just on the Shoestring Players. I mean, I remember them as a kid, and I remember coming here watching. What was their really time frame? What was the
Boy, dates are difficult for me, but certainly by the time we got into the early 70s, early to mid 70s, Shoestring was solidified. And I don't think it lasted much past the 90s. I think there might have been other shows. Somebody probably knows those dates very precisely. But as it happened, one of Corbin's goals in starting Shoestring.
You talk about that time period. It's really it's a Dick Corbin creation.
Yeah.
It's Dick Corbin's the man.
He was Shoestring Players. Yeah. That was it. And I don't know whether this came out in another interview that you had with Diane and Doris Corbin, But his real goal was to have something for his kids to do. And this theater provided that. And it also provided the opportunity for a lot of other kids as well to have something to do. Once his kids were old enough that they were no longer involved, they were away in college and so on, I think that sort of started to fade, you know. And he was getting older and had other things on his mind. And it came to a natural end. I mean, it wasn't a cataclysmic thing at all. It was just, okay, this is it. We've done it enough. And it just wasn't there anymore.
Was virtually all of the Dick Corbin shoestring player performances done here?
Every one that I was involved in was done here, yes. And I believe it would be a safe thing to say that they were all done here. Right. We actually had, you know, you may have found it somewhere up in the circle up here where they have the degrees for the Scottish Rite. We actually had a shoestring player's shoestring, or a boot with a shoestring on it, which would light up for every show.
Mike's still there.
Pardon?
Mike's still
Yeah.
there.
I don't think it's up there. It would, if it's here, it's not up there.
Okay.
Because those are frames that come down. That's very ingenious, by the way. There are actually 4 frames, 4 or 6, I don't remember, that can be let down by ropes from backstage. They fall into slots, fall into a slot. Then you pick them up and they hang there, and when you want to do the other degree, you just drop the next one down, and there's a V slot, and they just slide in there. There's some really interesting things back here.
Did you build that, John?
No, I didn't build that. That was here. But I figured out how it worked because I wanted to use it, and we had light behind it. It was cool.
Well, I'm not sure we've ever, even if there's a light behind it anymore, but we've obviously...
It's on the board.
Is it?
Yep.
We fixed that particular scale's justice, which is the closest we could have,
Yeah.
and be a Jackson without it screaming Masonic.
Yeah.
Are you a Mason?
Yes.
As am I. So you're Scottish Rite also?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Before I forget, the basement. You know, we have in the upper front right-hand corner the dirt basement, and on the floor is in fact an arch. And we of course bring people back there because when we bought it in 2001, there was a piece of cardboard that said Underground Railroad. It was just cardboard, circa 1858. That was just one hammer nail. And of course we've run with that. And of course you walk in there and you see there is excavation, and I can't find anybody in the Masons who can remember anything ever happening there. So it's sort of been there.
I do.
Do you? Okay, there you go. We need you.
I have pictures.
Really?
Yes.
Well, tell me
Where the pictures are, I don't know.
Well, tell me what you know.
I know that there was some excavation done, okay, when that arch was discovered. It seems to me that there might have been a wooden floor in there at one point. I remember there was something that was taken out, and by taking something out, this was found. And there are 2 stories, and I don't know which one is correct. One is the Underground Railroad, and the second one, and maybe you've heard this, was that Mrs. Kent had the tunnel built so she could go to church across the street without walking outside. Have you heard that story? Okay.
Sorry, Counselor. I like to go with the first one. It's much has more sizzle.
Well, still, it would function, you know, as part of the Underground Railroad if it got you from any one place to any other place
Sure.
without being seen. So that could be very much what it is. But I do remember that I took some pictures, and they are somewhere in my negative files, but the Scottish Rite should have them. I gave them hundreds of pictures of not only the classes, but of events that took place here, and just a lot of things. And I really do need to get into those negatives. There's probably several hundred.
Well, it'd be interesting only because I suspect that corporate history is fading every day. Now, that's natural for everything, but those who were part of your world and prior to are pretty much gone.
Yeah.
The Carlton Winchesters of the world, the Wally Larsons, all of which who were, Frank Carlton was still around, and some of the guys were still around when we bought this place in 2001.
Right.
But that's sort of, well, they passed on.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, anything regarding that crazy room, which we've had a lot of fun with.
Yeah. Well, the whole basement's fun.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
When people walk down there now, and because you take them from downstairs and you walk them through. I don't take them to the bathroom.
Okay.
Because they got to go through the catacomb-ish.
Yeah.
Looked like, and
It's much more rustic. There's some archways down there.
It's
It's very interesting.
and so and there's coffins and heads and we kind of the Masonic leftover stuff, which we leave there because people will find that curious. And we always say, what's the deal with the heads? Well, it's one of the heads of one of the guys who last time he
Asked about the head. Yeah. Okay.
You want to know any more?
It was.
It's
Yeah. The basement's been fun, but the whole history of the whole building is so phenomenal. I remember the gold room used to be gold, literally gold leaf on the mirrors and on the window. I don't know what you call those things over the window, sconces or something. And I remember when somebody came in and painted those with gold paint, and I just about cried. That was one of the worst things that I had ever seen. It went from being, okay, the gold was flaking off. It wasn't as shiny as it was once, but it was gold, and it was beautiful. It was really beautiful. You have to expect the fact that it's going to get old, but it was.
Well, subsequently, when Stan and Sarita redid that room, the gold room, ostensibly because of the gold carpet. I mean, they had that gold carpet there, but they put the gold leaf back up. So that's a lady named down on First Street did it.
Yeah, no, there's the people that do it.
D'Angelo,
yeah, and I remember when we first. This space was, of course, the traditional Masonic space with the tile floor. All right.
The black and white tile.
Black and white tiles, and of course it faces directly east as it must, and so on and so forth. And I remember Dick wanted to put carpeting out here, and he was very frugal, okay? And I don't know which carpeting store that he went to, but he found an excess supply of the ugliest orange carpet you have ever seen in your life and put it down. And then I had to light against that, which was not fun. But that carpeting persisted for about 25 years. I think you guys finally took that up.
Black and white floor.
You didn't know there was the tile floor?
Two things. We saw Don Blomquist brought in some pictures.
Yep.
Of Jackson actually sitting there. It was
Okay,
the
yeah.
1951
Yep.
piece, which saw, floor. And then, of course, the carpet was so gaudy. So we pulled
Yes,
that up,
it
and of
was.
course,
And it
now
was-
we have the wonderful floor. And we had to decide what to do with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's there.
It's still under here,
still
yeah.
underneath us. But this
Yeah.
has worked out well.
Yeah, no, this has become a very good space. I kind of regret that we don't have the stage to work anymore.
Yeah.
But you had other purposes for it, and that's the way it is. And I appreciate that too. Because I think the way the Scottish Rite was going, the way that the Masonic population overall is declining, I remember when we used to have a class of 40 or 50 or 60 people every 6 months going into the Scottish Rite. And I think the last class that I was aware of, and I'm sorry I don't keep up on it, but there were only 2 or 3.
Yeah, they.
And there just wasn't the base to support this building anymore. And I know that I did hear a quote from Stan Weeks that he was very happy that you were here, that the Jackson Center was here because you saved the consistory.
Well,
Because it would
right.
not have been able to be otherwise. There's been an awful lot of people involved in it, I know, and this has brought the recognition of Jackson, to at least multiple levels above where it was. It used to be, yes, Jackson was from this area and so on and so forth, and quite frankly, I didn't know who he was. And as time went by and as you made the name more and more known, and made it more and more visible in Jamestown, I think it's brought a bigger interest to me in knowing what Jackson is all about. And certainly just by walking around here and looking at the displays and looking at the various items that you have, the desk and so on and so forth, it's a creepy feeling. It really is. To think this man was here and lives on in this venue, in this building. And I hope that can continue for a long time, because I thought the move of the statue from Jackson Square to the front yard here was a very good thing, because it really didn't belong down there. It needed to be here. And the way that you're collecting so much information from the people, I know you personally have been very much involved in getting these oral histories from people. And you have to be credited for that too, because there aren't too many people that would put that time and effort. And I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of hours of interviews you've done. I think I've watched them all on the
Channel 19? There's Peterson for that, John.
I don't know what it is, but anyway, I think you keep that channel going. But it's so great that it can be. And yet, the cool thing is that, yes, this is a totally different place than it was when we were doing Shoestring Players here. But it's still the same place. We had a reunion. Now it's been a couple of years ago. You did some interviews with some of the old shoestringers. And it's like, for everybody that came to that reunion, it was like walking back into home. You've kept enough of what it was so that it's very recognizable and very, very nostalgic to all of us who were involved in that era. Yeah. It's been a long trip. He used to play the organ up there for the show down here.
Dick.
Right. He did all the music, okay? He did the organ, and his son David did piano. So we had organ and piano. But anyway, one of the challenges was that he wanted the organ down here on the floor. And so I came up with a scheme which allowed us to bring the organ down on the floor and plug it in. I think the plugs are still over there. They're round things. You plug it in, and there was a relay system that turned on the speakers upstairs and all that. It was a lot of clever things happened during those days, technically.
That's a big organ.
It was.
How the hell did you get it from there to here?
I don't know. It happened one day.
Once it came down here.
Yeah, that's the way things happened with Dick Corbin. Just all of a sudden, it would happen. Whether it would be, I've heard the story about him buying a piano for, I think it was for St. Luke's, I'm not sure. But that piano just happened one day. And I've heard the story, and I don't remember who it was that told me, was with him when he bought that piano. And he had to write 2 separate checks for it so that nobody would know who bought it. I either he didn't want Doris to know or he didn't want somebody to know.
Yeah, yeah.
And she later found the receipt for that piano and said, "What is this?" after he was gone.
Yeah, yeah.
But things would just appear. I'd say, we need a scrim. I want a white scrim so we can do this thing behind a scrim and so on and so forth. Pretty soon, there was a white scrim. And the other thing, like, I don't know whether the bullet lights are still around that we had. In the early days, we didn't have many lights. Okay, what was here from the Scottish Rite was pretty minimal. And once we got the capability to run more lights, I was on a quest for new lights. Well, theater lights are quite expensive. But I was out in Michigan and happened to run across a place that I had known for a long time. It was called the Whoopie Bowl. It was in Drayton Plains, Michigan, or someplace like that. But you never knew what you're going to find. Remember how Don Gage was here? Yeah, same kind of thing. Whatever you could buy and sell to make a buck, that's what these people did. So I walked in there and there were about 30 of these silver bullet lights, shaped, like, well, some of them are around here somewhere.
We were just taking out in the last year.
Yeah, okay.
6 months.
Anyway, they were marked $4.50 a piece. Okay? And I said, these aren't theater lights, but they can work. Okay? So I bought those lights. I don't think I paid $4.50 a piece for them. I think I paid more like $2 a piece to get the whole mess out of there. And I brought them back, and I went in the sample shop over at Blackstone. And we made gel holders to go on the front of those lights so that you could slip colored gels in and out. And those were our first lights that we had to put out along the bar. At one point there were seats up here and we had the brass railings and everything. And we would put lights along there to light this area out here because it really wasn't lit otherwise, other than those two big, huge things. They're still up there? Well, that's all there was out here. And then I told them we needed some, the reason I got into this story was, I told them we really need some lights to put up in the ports that are a little bit more powerful to shine down here. And just somehow they just magically appeared one day. I don't know where they came from. I was treasurer of the Shoestring Players and I never saw the checkbook, so I really don't know where the money came from or how it happened. But I think Richard was rather phenomenal in making things happen. He could make it happen, and I always appreciated that.
Is there a historian of the Shoestring Players? Somebody who kind of kept the playbills and other stuff? Is there?
Well, the official historian is Bob Terryberry. Okay, I don't think he's really got it organized. Everybody that was involved then has bits and pieces. I actually did slides, 35 millimeter slides of a number of shows, probably 15 of them or so. Some of those slides I digitized and are up on the internet. I don't know exactly where they are right now because I had a site called Shoestring Scrapbook for a while. And then it sort of turned into a Facebook page, and I gave David Corbin all the slides and everything, and I don't really know whether he's digitized them or not. But another interesting thing is I also have audio recordings. Of course, at that time, there was no video. Video didn't exist. And I still have audio recordings of 8 or 10 shows that are phenomenally good. Ed has been helpful by loaning me his Revox tape recorder for the last 5 years, maybe, Ed? I keep promising I'm going to get them all done. They were on, 10.5-inch reels, and you can't play those on your regular little tape recorder. But I'm rather amazed at the quality that those are and just what we did. And the talent that was in this room at that time too. I didn't realize it. I didn't realize how good some of these people really were. And some of them were phenomenal. People like Pat Gibson. Pat Gibson was a tenor to end all tenors. He really was. And I listened to the recordings of him, and it's like, God, that was amazing. Even today. And just the memories that just those sounds bring back, very, very interesting.